Well, hello again everyone, welcome back. Thanks for visiting once again. Just a quick video today. Well, it may not be quite so quick actually, but a video today about another model kit that I've acquired. It's a Christmas present. I did talk about this on a live recently with Paul and Sue, alias the Plastic Monkey and the Ice Queen 7. I was very pleased to be part of that a little while ago. And I said I was going to be excuse me, acquiring a 132 scale F4U-1D Corsair, and of course here it is. So it's quite a large box, but I'll go into that in a minute. But whilst talking about other channels, I wanted to give a quick, just a nod, honourable mention, I think, really, to Nigel's modelling bench, who's undertaking some really quite interesting projects at the moment. He's become a good friend, actually, I would like to think. I hope he thinks so too. Full of good advice. Excuse me, still coughing. It'll get better, I promise. So, as I say, Nigel's full of good advice, full of ideas and original ways of doing things, and I've got a lot of time for him. And you'll all know Nigel, I've no doubt at all. And for the one or two of you that don't, what I would say is pop across and see Nigel's modelling bench. Something like 25, nearly 26,000 subscribers. So he's a big channel, and he's big because he's good. He does things well, and the finished results of the models he builds are really quite outstanding. But there's a couple of things that are worth looking at. His Scharnhorst buddy build with I can't remember what the name of the other guy is. I'll put a link into him when I find out after the end of the video. But excuse me, Nigel's doing a buddy build with somebody on this 1/200th scale Scharnhorst model. I think there'll be some challenges on there, but watching how a really good modeler faces those challenges and deals with them is always interesting. So it's always worth visiting Nigel for that reason. So there you go. Approbation over for now. I'm going to talk about the F4U-1D Corsair today. This is the 132 scale aircraft series model. As you will know, I put together a 148 scale version, and I did that really as a test bench for this kit, and I wanted to see if I could produce this in the Fleet Air Arm livery, together with the roundels and so on, which I have done, and that turned out okay. So that was the test. This, I think, is the real thing, shall we say, given that it's a lot more detailed, and we'll go through that as well. And I wanted to do a quick review. Now, I know this kit's been, shall we say, reviewed to death before. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to add any. Excuse me, how very annoying. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to add any particular uniqueness to it, but I'm going to try. And so what we'll do is we'll take a look at this anyway. It's the it's slightly different art. Sorry about the light on the subject here. It's a shiny box. The art is slightly different on the 132 to the 148. From memory, the 148 scale model is flying to the right, the 132 is flying to the left, as you can see, and in the background you can see what I suspect to be a Pacific theatre area, an old dead volcano there, I suspect. So there we have it. This highlights the fact that the Corsair was initially used by the American Marines, and the reason for that is because it was actually initially designed as a carrier-borne aircraft, but there were problems landing the aircraft for a number of reasons. First of all, the nose is really very long here, and when you look out the front from the pilot's seat here, it's actually rather difficult to see anything past this something like 13-foot nose and this big old Hamilton standard propeller here. So it's difficult to land on to an aircraft carrier with this aircraft, and it wasn't really fully understood how to deal with that at the time it was built. The other thing that was quite key about this is that the undercarriage oleo legs suspension was a little too stiff, and this led to bouncing on landing, which meant that pilots had very great difficulty in actually collecting the arrestor wires, and that led to accidents, and it wasn't really fully understood how to deal with this. And I'll talk a little bit about how that was dealt with, and when it was dealt with, the aircraft itself became a stalwart of the Pacific theatre, both for the Royal Navy and for the American US Navy as well, and obviously continue to be used, I think, from from marine bases across the Pacific to support troops and so on. So excuse me. The Corsair itself, I think, was built to around about 12,000 examples in the Second World War, and over 3 manufacturers. So Chance Vought was the major builder of this aircraft. It was also built by a company called the Brewster Aircraft Corporation, who built only a few, I think 1,000 or so. I stand to be corrected on this, of course. And the other builder was the Goodyear Aircraft Company, and you can see some examples on the side of the box here. On the right you have an F4U-1D, and on the left that is in fact an FG-1D example. So you can do both of those in the American livery if you wish to, and I'm just moving the box away so that I can now take the lid off, and maybe we can perhaps bring it back in here, and maybe show you. There you are, there's the FG-1D variant there. So those are pictures there. Whoops, try not to bash things about. As always with Tamiya or Tamiya, depending on where you come from, there are built model examples of the bits and pieces. You can see the Corsair with the wings folded there, and then you can see the example of the figure. I believe it's quite a good figure, and there are some photo etch pieces within the model, and if you're going to be looking at photo etch on this particular project, then it's worthwhile knowing where the photo etch is. So when you get the box lid open, what you will see is something that looks like this. I've moved the decals. They're normally face down and on the bottom like that, so they don't get scratched. I won't be using those decals for reasons that many of you will already know, but you have a mask set in there, probably will use that. But I did an inventory of all the kit parts here, and we'll do my usual thing of looking through these as we go. And I thought, I can't find the photo etch, and then immediately felt after about a day a little foolish because the photo etch is there. So it's in card, it's behind card here, and stuck on, so I'm not going to pull that off because I risk bending it. But there are some photo etch components that it's worth looking at. So in fact, actually, let's see if we can remove this. It's quite well stuck on with some sort of gum here. I'd poster gum or something like that. As you can hear the sound of it. Yeah. So we can put that back on there, but as you can see, it's well protected. This card is quite thick, so this will all be flat, and there are some fairly significant number of sections that will need to be removed and cleaned up, including seat belts here, which you can see are once again really quite significantly detailed if we zero in on this. So what we'll do is we'll do some zeroing in when we need to. For now we won't do that. Let's put that away somewhere else, and I'm going to put the box on my little tray table here. Excuse me. And we can then take a look at the important parts here which I've put together. So as with most 132 scale series, you will have seen my video on the F16, also known as the Viper. It incorporated a book rather like this, so you get a research book here, and you can see on the book here you can see the F4U-1D with the blown canopy there. You can also see the F4U-1A with the what do they call it? birdcage canopy, that was it. So the blown canopy was introduced to increase rear vision, but this is a window here that the pilot could see from. So there we go. So you can you can see the example there, and there's a wealth of information contained within about the early development of the aircraft here, the F4U-1, then the production variants, where it was active, and so on. And you move through from the, as you can see, the three-bladed propeller aircraft, which were the up to F4U-1Ds, and then the F4U-4s and beyond contained a four-bladed propeller and a slightly more powerful engine. And this aircraft was used right up to the Korean War, in fact. So it's got some fairly significant history, and as they say, quality, excuse me, quality stands the test of time. And it's certainly worth looking at this in terms of your research. So there's a particularly interesting part here with relation to canopies. We'll just see if we can zero in on that just a little bit. You can now see the difference between an F4U-1A canopy. You can observe here this section, this scallop here, and the F4U-1D, F4U-4's canopy. You can see it's a lot clearer, and there's no bar in the later variant there. So this sort of research is extremely useful. So you can recognise an F4U-4 by its four-bladed propeller, and of course the fact that it's got a different canopy. You'll also know, of course, about the way that the wheels retracted. So as they retract upwards, they turn sideways, and it allows the wheels to be stored into a very small space, or much smaller space, which means that the wings can be thinner. Now we can look in detail at the cockpit. So this is, I think, a slightly original cockpit here, or pretty original one. I have a video of the Fleet Air Arm FG-1A Corsair, which you can look at. It's worthwhile taking a glance at that, because that, if you wish to model an FG-1A in the Fleet Air Arm livery, then that's certainly worth taking a glance at, because that is completely original. Some of the photographs you'll see, perhaps not necessarily in this particular example, but some of the photographs you'll see will be restored aircraft, and the instrument panels will be different, and things will have been added in, and so on and so forth. So it's really worthwhile doing the research. And even researchers can be wrong, so it's worthwhile being open to looking at these at different things. We can see here the some detail on the engine here, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, which was more or less the same across all the variants, but some were more powerful than others. We can see the exhaust manifolds here, or the exhaust pipes here, and we can also see the air cooling vane system here. We'll have a look at that on the model as well. I think that's fairly faithfully reproduced. And we can see an example here of I suspect this to be a restored F4U-4, but you can see this with the cowling covers removed. So the cowling covers came in 4 sections, and they were numbered, and they should be put back in the same way that they're taken out, although they can be put back in differently. And again, you can see the F4U-4 four-bladed propeller there. And also this is an F4U-4 here, because you can see this chin intake here, which I can't remember what that was for, whether it was for the supercharger. I believe it was for the supercharger, but I'm not absolutely certain. Again, those Corsair experts out there, absolutely come and give me a shout if I'm wrong about this. What we can also see here is the wing folding mechanisms and so on, and all of these. Now, in the Fleet Air Arm variant, all of this was dark coloured. It was all glossy sea blue. It wasn't the what is it called? I'm going to have to look that up actually. It wasn't the yellow colour that we expect. Well, it's called yellow green by Tamiya, but it's zinc chromate yellow. That's the colour. And indeed, inside the cowling cover here on the Fleet Air Arm variant, no prizes for guessing that I'm going to be doing the Fleet Air Arm variant. the inside of the cowling was in fact white. We can see examples of inside the wheel wells here. We can see some wiring here. There's not a lot of wiring visible in any of the models of Corsair. This here is a canvas panel. Now you can see this is an internal green colour. This is the American internal green colour, and this is a slightly darker sort of, I don't know what to call it, quite honestly. It's a colour. We'll call it shit colour by moonlight, shall we? But in the Fleet Aeron variants, it's all dark blue, and none of this is coloured in this way. So I suspect this to be a restored variant. So if you want to be true to the original and accurate to the original, then it's worthwhile looking at your resources and your research. Tech tips, yes, absolutely. Here's what you'll need, and so on. We'll gloss over that. For those of you who want to model an American aircraft, there you have the let's zero out to 0.5. There we go. That's helpful. You have the designs here, including stencils, of which there are plenty. There are a lot of them. And it's worthwhile looking at that. That's two-sided, by the way, so you've got an FG1D variant, and then you've got an F4U-1D variant. So notice that the cockpit is more bulbous here than it is slightly there, so it's worthwhile taking a look at that, making sure that you're accurate in this as well. So that's that there, and then we're on to the instructions, which are, as you can see, substantial. It's the sort of instructions that we've come to know and expect from Tamiya, and starts in landscape format and then moves very quickly to portrait format. And looks at the history of the aircraft. It talks about F4U-1A, it moves to the F4U-1D, and various other variants there. So we can move further through that. There's a set of cautions here. Don't drive across narrow bridges at all. Don't run with scissors. Don't drink your own bath water. All of the good things that we need to know. And there's some again recommended tools, painting instructions and undercoating and so on and so forth. That's all good, and so it goes on. Tech tips are plenty. I would expect that probably fairly experienced modelers will be the ones that tackle this. Maybe a newer modeler might do so, and my honest opinion on this is, if you are a newer modeler, you could do worse than tackle one of these, as maybe your second or third project, maybe your fourth project. It's going to be challenging, but if you're patient and if you follow the instructions pretty closely, you should come up with something that looks pretty good, I would say. I know some people are a bit nervous about large scale models, and perhaps some people haven't got the room for them either. But look, it's worthwhile getting them, because actually they test one's skill, because I think the larger the scale, the less places there are to hide, quite honestly. Let's move that grubby old tissue out of the way. Excuse me. Anyway, moving along, what we're going to do here is I shall do my standard procedure for kit reviews, which is to run through the instructions. Look, not all of them and not in detail, because there are actually, there are 123 phases of instructions here. We won't look at all of them for reasons that will become apparent very quickly, but what I generally tend to do is have a little look at the cockpit. I will talk a little bit about the 1/48th scale model as well, because it provides a fairly nice little reference. So we can pull out the bits and pieces that we need as we need them. And as I look away, my voice changes, obviously, as you can imagine. So we have to contend, of course, with the staples. I'm going to just pull these apart, because it's actually a lot simpler to do that than it is to try and remove them, we'll put them over there out of the way. So the first thing we can take a look at here will be the footrest bulkheads here, and obviously in 132 scale there's considerably more detail. There are items to add here as well that we can see. I'm just looking for the, okay, here we have in here the control panel and also the foot pedals. So let's just have a look into those. So again, as you can see, the foot pedals, this arrangement here melds into the bulkhead here. So the bulkhead is that way up, and that sits into there like that. There are locating holes at the back of this. Let's see, we zero in and show you that. So those locating holes here just simply slide into the back of these here up at the top. So it's all pretty straightforward from that perspective. There shouldn't be too many surprises in that for us, I would say. What we can also see is, we'll just have a quick look at this here. This is the front part of the or the first part of the control panel here, and we can see, in fact actually above that we can see the control stick here, which is faithfully reproduced, as you can see, it leans slightly forward so that one's hand can be in a reasonably relaxed position rather than like that, which would hurt somebody fairly quickly. You'd get repetitive strain injury and goodness only knows what. There are some clear parts to put into the back of this so that you can simulate a glass front. So you decal into the back of the, as we can see down here, let's just move that down. As you can see down here, we'll just look into that. Decal onto the back of this. Then this unit goes into the front of that, and you then paint the front of this. You may choose to paint this, but you'd have to mask it, but you can, I think the easiest way is just decal, stick in, having painted that. So there we go. So some good examples of some good piece of kit there. These lines here, these units here, are the footrests for the pilot, and sit into the bottom, and we can again start to look at some reasonably significant level of detail in here. I can't see there'd be an awful lot of point in updating an awful lot of this. We've got radio switches here, we've got other bits and bobs here. I can't remember what all these things are, to be honest with you. I forget. And then there'll be other arrangements to add in here, but we'll look at that in the instructions presently. So let's zip out there. So we need to be patient to start with with those, and as long as we get the basics right right at the beginning, then things should go along fairly nicely for us. Is that right? No, that's not the right piece of plastic covering here. Not quite sure, or is it? Yeah, I think it. We'll use that anyway, just to protect that component. That'll turn up later on. The as you can see in here, this will be your control panel. You've got the knobbly bit sticking out there, and as we can see, the glass parts, the clear parts, are, as you would expect, pretty flawless. I'm going to have a quick look inside them because they invariably interest people, so it's worthwhile taking a glance at them. So let's have a little crack at that. So yes, they're very nicely done, as you would expect. What I have seen in the past is, I use the blunt end of this, is sometimes you see a moulding line down the back of this, down the back of the canopy. That's not happened here. Now, if you do get a moulding line down the back of a canopy, it's not a problem. If you use, you can either use polishing compounds, but I think the easy way that I've used in the past is to use 8,000 to 13,000 grit dry sandpaper, and you just gently rub on this in a sort of circular motion on the 8,000. Don't rub too hard, but rub gently. What will happen is this will start to cloud, and then as you go down through the grits from 8 to 13,000 grit, the cloudiness will disappear, and when you get to 13,000 grit, you're very gently rubbing this, you'll find that bingo, your little line's gone and you've got clarity in this panel here. You want to take it to the next level. Certainly you can do that by using some polishing compounds, soft polishing compounds, but that's of course not going to be necessary here. So number of areas here. I think these are the port and starboard wing lights here. Red on the left on the port side, and green on the right on the starboard side. So that's important, and that'll become apparent, the reason why that's important, a bit later on. So cockpit there. You've got an opportunity to make the seat belts here. Now in an American aircraft, and you might want to use them to do the seat belts. I will be doing the FG1A Corsair KD431, which is at the Fleet Air Arm Museum in Yeovilton, and I've got a great source for that because I was very privileged to be able to walk around the aircraft. I've got 2 videos on my channel that you can see that go through that. It's certainly worthwhile taking a look at those if you want to. In particular, the cockpit video gives you a lot of quite valuable, I hope, information to allow you to be able to model the inside of an FG1A in Fleet Air Arm livery cockpit. But that cockpit doesn't actually have any seat belts on it. How do I know? I sat in it. You can decide to be faithful to the actual model if you want to, or the actual aircraft, and model a flying one. I intend to model the static exhibit myself, so there will be some weathering on it because it's 80 years old, but I will do the static exhibit and it won't have any seat belts, so I won't need them. So there we go. Manufacturing the seats here, seat backs here. Frameworks all come separately, which is great. Be a lot of cleanup required there, and then putting that together. I won't be putting a pilot in, and then we can look at the front end at the coaming here, which is the bit above the cockpit here, and that's generally coloured black. There's quite a lot of detail in here, right down to the switches, which will be visible at 1/32 scale. And of course down to the gun sight here, which has the rubber headrest on it in case the pilot bashes his head. Now, it was the case in some instances that pilots would not use the shoulder straps; they would just use the lap straps, and if they were brought to a sudden and unceremonious halt, then they would bang their heads. Not a good idea. Section 14 sees us actually start to look at the tail section here, and frameworks to be going into the back of the fuselage, and we'll take a quick look at the fuselage because compared to the 1/48 scale example, I'm just going to pull those staples out. Okay, that one's all right, so yeah, we'll be okay with that. But compared to the 1/48 example, this is a good deal more detailed. You'll be putting in some extra detail right down to additional panels here. Now, some of this will be glossy sea blue. Most of it, however, will be the zinc chromate yellow. So there'll be some priming and finishing to do here. I'm going to use the Australian paint. I can't remember what it's called now. You're shouting at me in modelling land of what it's called. Outlaw paint. So I'm going to use the Outlaw paints American green here. It looks reasonably good. It's worth a try on this one, I think, and it's certainly not an issue for me. I quite like the paint as I've used so far, and it's gone down really quite easily. It's an acrylic lacquer, so it'll be quite hard wearing hopefully as well. So that's the fuselage there. In terms of wing fitting, we'll come to that a bit later, but it's certainly worth noting that the cranked wing design here allowed this wing junction here to be much easier to manufacture for Vought Corsair or for Vought and for Goodyear and so on and so forth. So components were an awful lot easier to make for the wing sections here. So put that away a minute and move on quickly. Inserting componentry here. I suspect these will go in first and then be painted. Cockpit, there's some bracing here to go in, good idea. There's also a that's the cockpit firewall, I suspect there. They're starting to manufacture the exhausts here, which then go on to in front of the fuselage here. Interesting little touch here is that the N43 component, which is the circular removable section, isn't put in until after you've dealt with the the seams along the sides here. Very good idea that, and again, elegant idea of putting this particular panel in here, which means that there's very little in the way of seam filling to do there as well. So nice idea. Anything that reduces seam filling is probably a good idea. Same thing here. So all good ideas. We now move to the Pratt & Whitney engine, and as you will recall from my previous efforts with the 1/48 scale model, I was able to add some detail into that particular kit, and it wasn't quite accurate in the sense that the Pratt & Whitney double wasp has 2 spark plugs per cylinder, and I only put spark plug lines in for 1 per cylinder. Those of you who pointed that out, well done. But what I'd like to do is to look and compare the detail between the 132 and the 148 scale. It's quite significantly better, and we'll be able to observe some of this. So in terms of the way that this is done, you're looking at front half cylinders and then rear half cylinder, rear side cylinders. They come in 2 halves here. So we'll be putting those together. We have push rods. We also have the spark plug line distribution setter here, which is not, is it? Oh no, it is on here. So we can see that. So what we'll do is zero in on that, and we'll take a look at that quite closely, because it allows us to be able to take a glance at this. You can see the extending lines for each spark plug here, and it will be possible to extend some thin wire, and again what we'll use is this sort of thing. This is just simply multi-strand wire, which we can then extend from these sections here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 it looks like. So 32, oh, that doesn't seem right. Maybe I've miscounted or I've mistaken certain things, but there are 2 there are 2 spark plug lines per cylinder, so there should be 18 of those, so 36 spark plug lines. So yeah, I've miscounted somewhere along the line, but nevertheless that detail exists on this particular model kit, which is absolutely great. We've also got the push rods as well, and we have a good opportunity to be able to really make a good detailed engine. And the reason sorry about that. The reason why we would want to do that, I would suggest to you, is that unlike some other radial engined aircraft, like the, for example, FW-190, the cowling, the way that the cowling has been run, allows the engine to be seen in some considerable detail. So it's definitely worthwhile putting in the effort at this end of the build to get some rewards when you complete it. Staple has got caught in there. I've now removed it. So we have the cowlings here. So you have the option for cowlings open and cowlings closed. I will do cowlings open. Now I'm going to say to you, so that's the front cowling ring here. This cowling fits onto the back of that. So this detail here on this ribbing is good, and it is accurate in the sense that all of these ribbing lines are in the right place. These ribs themselves have holes in them. They had holes put through them to make them lighter, obviously. Hardly even know why I said that. Of course you'll know that. So it will look okay, but if you want to make that better, I think there are ways of getting these ribs 3D printed, and it's if you want to do that, then fantastic, have at it. It's definitely worthwhile. I won't be. What I may very well do with this in particular, with the cowlings open, is two things. First of all, if you examine the cowl flaps on the FG1A at Yeovilton, you will find that these cowlings are very, very thin indeed. So I may very well wish to thin them down a little bit, but I may add also some extra detail into these areas here and around here, because these were spring loaded, so it may be that one can make some springs to go all around here for all these flaps here, and that might perhaps improve the look of this quite a lot for those of you who might be interested in doing that. In terms of the moulding of the cowling covers themselves, as you can see, Tamiya have been quite clever here in the sense that they've done these two mouldings separately, and then they've fit them together after that fashion. These are quite thin. They're arrowed to show the front of the cowling, but as you can see, the detail is here with the cowling cover, but these would be separate units on the actual model. I imagine it's possible to do some clever things with magnets, possibly, to be able to have these removable. It might be nice to have that. It's certainly worth thinking about. I shall give that some consideration. So there we have that. We've got the completion of the engine here, the cylinder head covers, the cylinder electrical distribution wires to the spark plugs, one in front and one behind, so one wire will go underneath this head here, and that's going to be again a piece of detail that needs to be added. Attaching the front cowling, so the front cowling actually fits to the engine, and then you have your options here as to whether you want to have open or closed cowl flaps. I would suggest, yes, I think that's about where you do it. Closed cowl flap is section 33, section 31 is open. From there your engine is complete, and you can move on to the, what I call them, horizontal stabilizers, yes, and elevators, and then if you want to do them in the up or the down position, you can select that yourself. If you want to get really clever about this, and there's certainly no reason why you wouldn't, then you might be able to move the stick into a forward position to simulate the stick being in the same place as the elevators. But what you will also see here, and the level of detail that Tamiya have gone to, I'll just zero in and show you this. This is a trim strip, and this is an additional aid for pilots, which, when the elevator is pointed downwards, this points upwards and allows the elevator to be moved more easily at high speed. There is the same thing on the ailerons as well, and in the flaps, the elevator's down position, this is mimicked. So there will be a deflection on this element here, so that you can discern that when the model is static. So it's been very cleverly done, this. So we move on to, let's zero out again, shall we? There we go. We move to the tail wheel, and in the 1/48 scale model I manufactured a shackle out of copper, No need to do that here, the detail is there already, that's actually a tie-down shackle. There are tie-down shackles on the front undercarriage oleo legs as well. I don't know at this stage whether those are shown, but we'll come to that in a minute. We now have two options. We have extended wings, or we have folded wings. Now, just so that you know, the initial instructions for all of this, so these three phases here, are the same. The way that the wing folding mechanism works is it takes the main spar of the wing and extends it through a hinge mechanism, as it is in the real thing, so it is in the model. So the main spar is what you'll be using to attach the main sections of the wing to, and that simply fits into the underside here, which is fairly let's move that so that you can see it, shall we? There we go. It's fairly similar to the 1/48 scale model, and is again fairly straightforward. The landing gear bay walls are separate, of course, and it's worthwhile, investing some time on that. But there's quite a lot of presentation that you need to think about whether you want flaps up or flaps down. I will be doing flaps down, no question. And then there's assembly of the rest of the undercarriage gear bays, so port and starboard here, and then the front sections here. So there's a fair amount of work involved in this before you start to think about closing up the wing tops, and these wing tops then sit into the fuselage. Should sit in very easily. I suspect minimal test fitting will be required. So those sections are much similar. I will be doing folded wings, and the reason for that is the example at the Fleet Air Arm Museum is wings folded. One is in fact more folded than the other because only one of the wings has a jury strut fitted to it. Now I don't know why that is, and I haven't investigated that, and I will give consideration as to whether I make the starboard wing, no, the port wing actually is the one that hasn't got the jury strut on it, whether I make the port wing further leaned over. I probably won't, but because I think doing so would interfere with quite a lot of the mechanisms that have to be put in, because of course with the wings folded, the wing fold mechanisms will be visible. Essentially the process is much the same, except that this wing is folded, so we can essentially zop through that, and you can now see the wing fold mechanisms and all those kind of things being put in. AS8 is being called out on quite a lot of these by the looks of things. I can't remember exactly what AS8 is. Let's have a quick look at that whilst we're here. Probably doesn't say it here now. It says it's AS8. Navy blue. There you are. Glossy sea blue. Perfect. So this is all glossy sea blue in here. So what I will use for that is MRP glossy sea blue. I think the colour of it is very, very close to the glossy sea blue on the Fleet Air Arm Museum example. And having completed all of this section here, you're then looking at attaching the wing root. As I say, because of the way the crank is on the wings, this wing root attachment is actually a tangent. So the fairings there are much easier to produce. We then move to the landing gear, so starboard to start with in section 92, and then 93 will be the wheel attachment, and then port landing gear there. Now from what I can see, it doesn't look like there is a tie down shackle on either of these, so one can add this in, but in terms of adding in oleo leg detail, you won't need to do very much, because the tube work and the pipe work that I added in with copper wires, sorry, with lead wires actually, in the 1/48 scale model are already there, and you can add them in. So that will be tyre blackback section. This is a metal bar which is glossy sea blue. The lovely thing about this, we have got rubber tyres, but they're patterned in the correct way for an FG1A which is fantastic. The 1/48 scale example doesn't have that. So there we go. So we're then into the landing gear covers, which is again, it's all glossy sea blue. We've got more detail with the undercarriage jacks here, so you can see these being built. These are XF16, X11, AS8. I'm going to look at those undercarriage wells again, because I think all of this should be, with the exception of the push rod here, I think that should all be glossy sea blue, and I think it was all over painted glossy sea blue. So I'll take a look at that and I'll confirm that during the course of the build. We're then into the flaps. Now you have again options for up and down. I'll be using down, and if you want to mimic an FG1A, then what you would do is glue in the W5 component into the starboard wing, fuselage side flap here, then seal it in and remove the legend that it leaves, and do that top and bottom, because the early flap didn't have a foothold. And what the pilots used to do, as I may have mentioned, is they used to climb up into here, into this area, and they used to put their foot in this area, which means that this ribbing here that you can see there was all aluminium coloured. It was all shiny, and then you might have some zinc chromate primer still showing, and then some glossy sea blue. So this is where the wear and weathering would be, and then you would see some panel lining, some rivet lining scratches and so on, either on the rivet lining or elsewhere. Most of the time this was just the aluminium colour. So what I will be doing is the technique I expounded to you in the video of the 1/48 Corsair, which is to undercoat with a primer, probably a grey primer, to then cover that with an aluminium paint. It may very well be a bare metal aluminium, because I have that already. I've got an extreme metal AK version of that. I then cover it with the zinc chromate, a couple of coats of that, and then the glossy sea blue afterwards. And what you can then do is you can then use very fine sandpaper, a 2000 grit sandpaper like that, for example, and just rub very gently, and it really is a fingertip rubbing, just like that. And what happens is the lacquer paint comes off and exposes first the yellow and then the silver. You have to have your wits about you, but you can do it, and it looks, I think, really pretty convincing. So we come towards really the final conclusion here, but there's one little surprise in the background here for you, as you will probably know, some of you anyway. The cockpit mountings. Now we're into the outer wings, upper surfaces and lower surfaces. There's some preparation work to do before we put the surfaces together. We will need to ensure that, in fact, we don't need to take anything off. We can simply fill this section. So, a bit of history for you here. As you can see, this is the completed section here of the outer wing. This section here, all of that section, was removed for Fleet Air Arm aircraft, and it's about 7 inches of wing width or wing length that were taken off, and this was then sealed up here, and a wooden panel covered it, and the lights were simply placed just slightly further inboard. So we've got those P2 lights there, P2 and P3, so we're going to have to engineer something to get those lights in. That's actually much easier on the 132 than the 148 scale, because we're going to have clipped wings on this aircraft, because the reason for that is that the escort carriers that the Royal Navy used were converted warships which had hangars in them, and the height of the hangar was less high than could accommodate the full width wing. Now, there was an advantage to having a clipped wing. It meant that the roll rate on the aircraft was slightly higher than the standard aircraft, so it was slightly more manoeuvrable. So that's what we will be doing there, but we don't have to get the razor saw out this time because we already have the A13 component here. Let's zero out at you. So we have the A13 and the A5 component that we just don't need to install, and we can complete the end of this just with some sealed putty and so on, and sand that off, make sure it's even both sides. Outer wing flaps installation here, and then fitting finally the wings onto the spars here. We've got, as you can see, the jury struts here, and they're recommending their XF3+2, so it's the internal green. I think maybe red, actually a sort of a darkish red colour, because that's what colour the jury struts were at Yeovilton. I may go with that. But as you can see, this whole thing comes together, and it starts to look like an aircraft. Yeah, there we are. So we're nearly there. Interestingly, the last thing to do is to manufacture and install the propeller. It's a Hamilton standard hydromatic propeller. It's about 13 foot 4 inches diameter, so it's actually, at that stage, it was the largest propeller fitted to a single engined aircraft in history at that point. And then cowlings on there. That's recommending the interior green on the inside of here. Again, I think perhaps it's worthwhile doing the research, but remember our little arrows that I pointed out on those cowlings. We're being told to make sure we note the direction on them, so really important. But it is saying don't glue these in, so I imagine they're probably going to just clip in. Fuel tanks and bombs, don't need those. Don't need those pylons, I won't be using them. Don't need the rockets, won't be using them, because the FG-1A in the Royal Navy use didn't have any of that, well, at least not in the museum variant, and that's what I'm going for. So that would be me done effectively. And in excuse me, 51 minutes, that's 122 steps, not all of which we follow, but it gives you an example of where you are, and gets you to a completed model. Now, when will I be doing this? That is indeed the question. I have a few projects to finish, and I hopefully will get round to doing those in the not too far distant future. I'm hopeful that that will be the case, and if you have journeyed this far into modelling land to listen to my haphazard meanderings, then I'm very grateful to you. I hope that this has been interesting. Put them away over there, out of the way. That's for another project. I hope it's been interesting to you. I hope that my consumptive sounds of coughing and spluttering weren't too annoying for you. I'd be very happy if you join me on this particular project, and I'll look forward to seeing you the next time round. In the meantime, enjoy your modelling, and I hope you have a good time doing that. And do leave a comment, do leave a like, a share, a subscribe. I think that's what they say in the world of YouTube these days, don't they? So thanks very much once again. So before I start to burble insanely, I shall say all the best to you all. We'll see you on the next one. Take care for now. Bye bye.